So we're going to memorise the longest equation in the Level 1 syllabus in less than 10 minutes. This is the equation. It's the equation for the standard deviation of a 2-asset portfolio. Now, this is the sort of thing that you'll see during or towards the end of one of our lessons. First of all, you would have received a really clear, straightforward explanation of the content. Then we would give you something like this. It's a memory-efficient way of thinking about the content, so you can really begin to lock it into your long-term memory. So let's get started. Imagine a set of scales. These represent the equal sign. Equations should balance, and scales are determining whether the two sides are balanced or not. On one side of the scales is an old leather-bound book containing pictures of two people's bottoms. Now, a portfolio is a term that can be used to refer to a book, so this is quite literally a portfolio of two asses. On the top of the book is an upside-down snail. An upside-down snail looks like the symbol for standard deviation. So together these represent the standard deviation of a 2-asset, a 2-ass portfolio. On the other side of the scales, there's a bus stop with 3 plastic bags outside of it. In between each of the plastic bags, there's an ambulance. The bus stop represents the square root symbol because the square root symbol looks like an open-sided building with a roof. The plastic bags represent the brackets in the equation, and the ambulances represent the plus signs. The first 2 bags are of a similar size, but the third bag is much bigger than the other 2. You go over to the first bag. Inside it there's something moving about. You try to pick the bag up, but it's heavy and there's some gooey slime on the bag which makes it difficult to hold. Suddenly you hear 2 gunshots which come from inside the bag. You open the bag up to see what's going on. The movement in the bag is caused by 2 tiny little superhero figures which are flying around inside it. The bag is heavy because there's a large weight inside it, and the gooey slime comes from the trail of a snail which is lying upside down in the bag. Underneath the snail and the weight there are 2 small guns, and as you're watching, the little superhero figures are still flying around and they knock into the guns, causing them to go off again. Well, 1 rhymes with gun, so the image of the gun is always linked to the number 1. The little superhero figures represent to the power of 2. The weight and the upside down snail are being subjected to the power of the superheroes. The weight and the gun, with the superhero figure flying around it, represents the weighting of asset 1 squared. The weight represents weighting, the gun represents 1, and the superhero represents to the power of 2. The snail in the gun, with the other superhero figure flying around, represents the standard deviation of asset 1 squared. The snail is standard deviation, gun is 1 again, and the superhero represents to the power of 2 again. You're looking at the scene in the bag and then you realise that there's also a time machine in the bag. You gather up all the elements in the bag and you put them into the time machine. They're being multiplied, timesed together. You close the bag up. You decide to look in the second bag. Similar to the first bag, there's something moving around inside it. Once again, you try to pick it up, but it's heavy, and there's the same gooey slime on it, which is making it difficult to hold. This time you don't hear any gunshots, but you do hear some strange karate-like noises coming from inside the bag. You open the bag up. Again, the movement in the bag is caused by 2 little superhero figures flying around inside it. And again, the bag is heavy because there's a large weight inside it. And once again, the gooey slime is coming from the trail of a snail, which is lying upside down in the bag. In this bag, however, underneath the snail and the weight, instead of 2 small guns, there are 2 little shoes. As you're watching, the little shoes kick the weight and the snail and make a karate-like shriek as they do so. The weight and the shoe with a superhero flying around them represents the weighting of asset 2 squared. The shoe represents 2, since shoe rhymes with 2. The snail in the shoe with the other superhero flying around them represents the standard deviation of asset 2 squared. The shoe being 2 again, the snail being standard deviation, and the superhero being to the power of 2. Again, there is a time machine in the bag, and you gather up all the elements and you put them into the time machine, and again they're being multiplied or times together. You close the bag up. You decide to look in the third bag. Well, the third bag is different from the other 2. It's much bigger and it's not moving. You try to pick it up, but it's even heavier than the other bags, and there's even more gooey slime. You open the bag up and look inside. In fact, this bag is so big you climb inside it. The first thing you see is that there are no superhero figures in this bag, and all you can see is a weight attached to a little gun. For some reason, perhaps you're overcome with enthusiasm, you decide to practice some of your karate. And you kick your shoe representing number 2, into the weight attached to the gun, weight of asset 1, causing it to go off. You've hurt your foot and you bend down to rub it. And as you do so, you're wondering why the bag is so much heavier than the others. Then you see why. Above, there is another weight attached to the very top of the bag. It falls down and it hits you on the head. This other weight is also attached to a little shoe. Think the weight of asset 2. So not only do you get hit on the head with the weight, you also get kicked by the shoe as it falls. Now things have been pretty bad for you in this bag so far, but they're about to get even worse. You look over to your left and see a massive green P. Now this represents the correlation coefficient because it looks like the letter P, which looks like the letter rho for correlation coefficient. The P rolls towards you and rolls over everything in the bag. Your shoe, the weight attached to the gun, the weight attached to the shoe, and it keeps on rolling. Further across the bag, in the path of the P, there are 2 more upside down snails. This is why there is more slime, because there are 2 snails in this bag. One of the snails is attached to a gun, and one is attached to a little shoe. So think the standard deviation of asset 1 and asset 2. The P rolls over the snails and squashes them. And the P carries on rolling and it rolls into a big time machine. You then put everything in together in the time machine. You even take off your shoe and put it in as well. Everything again is being times together. And you close the bag up. You take a few steps back and you look at the whole scene. So, do you think you'd be able to remember the equation or replay that story in your mind? Well, what we're going to do now to reinforce it is we're going to replay the key elements of the animation, but ask you some questions about it as we go. See how many you get right. What was on the left-hand side of the scales? A portfolio of 2 asses with an upside-down snail on top of it. How many bags were there at the bus shelter and what was between them? Three bags with ambulances in between them. What was different about the third bag? It was bigger, heavier, and had more slimy goo on it. What was making the first bag move? two superhero figures flying around inside it. What was making the first bag heavy? A weight. What was making the bag slimy and difficult to pick up? Slime from an upside down snail, which was in the bag. What did you hear before you opened the bag? Two gunshots. The second bag was similar to the first bag, but instead of two guns, what was in the bag attached to the weight and the snail? Two little shoes. What were the shoes doing and what noise were they making? They were kicking the weight and making a karate-like shriek. Hoo-yah! Hoo-yah! In the third bag, who kicked the weight? You did. What hit you on the head? A weight with a little shoe attached to it. What appeared and rolled over everything in the bag? A huge green pea. Why was there more slime on this bag? Because there were two upside down snails in the bag. So now, try to write out the equation using only your recollection of the story to help you. If you get stuck, go back into the story and refresh your memory about what happened in what order and what represented what. But try not to think about the equation too much. Try to focus on the story, because that's the bit that is memory efficient. It's those images that will really stick in your mind and help you to remember the equation by referencing the story first. Good luck.